Welcome to another episode of This Is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast. Season 3, Episode 36, your safe space to discuss sports, politics, social issues, and even religion, where we will take it all very seriously, but not too seriously. I don't know how to frame this episode. It was going to be Two Idiots Discuss Sports, the Major League Baseball Division Championship Series, and it might as well be for me. Once again, I was wrong. Prognostication on many things, but particularly sports, does not seem to be my forte, although if you look at the landscape of social media and punditry in general, it doesn't seem to be anyone's particular foray. I have my buddy Brian on to talk about the epitaph for the 2023 Atlanta Braves, the divisional series between the Phillies and the Diamondbacks, and the divisional series between the Astros and the Texas Rangers. Once again, thank you to all my dear listeners, to all my loyal listeners. Please like, subscribe, thumbs up, write a review, 5 stars, distribute to the peoples far and wide. If you like what you hear, This Is Why I Don't Vote is on Patreon. Please consider supporting.
Act 1, Two Idiots Discuss Sports, Major League Baseball Division Championship Series.
As promised, I never let it be said that I do not deliver. As a podcaster, my buddy Brian on to discuss the National League and the American League Championship Series, the divisional series. Brian, let's start out with the epitaph for one Atlanta Braves, the team that had, as we discussed, one of the best offenses in the history of Major League Baseball. And who better to write said epitaph than you? Your thoughts, sir?
My first thoughts are, why you got to bring up old shit?
I know it's been a week.
dude, it's. I got to be honest, man. It still hurts a little, stings a little. I didn't feel awesome going into the playoffs in the first place. So let's talk about the epitaph. I mean, if you want to go epitaph. The epitaph for the 2023 Atlanta Braves could go down as the most prolific offense in Major League Baseball history, top to bottom, with players that are still here, still going to be here for years. One of the most prolific offenses in history. They mix and matched a lot of arms, starting pitchers throughout the season, and as we got closer and closer to the season, injuries happened yet again. Max Fried developed blisters. Charlie Effin Morton, as he's known in the playoffs, developed some finger schmedge, inflammation that kept him out of the first round. And you and I talked about this. I didn't feel good going into the first round. And one of the reasons was because of pitching. What I didn't expect was that historic offense to go cold. And that's what happened. The bats went cold. And if you look at it from top to bottom, the entire offense, I don't want to say the entire offense, but a lot of the energy that was the Atlanta Braves this year was fed off of Ronald Acuna, who had the most prolific season of anyone in history. 40 steals, other way around. 40 home runs, 70 steals. No one's ever done it. He created the 40-70, 30-60, 40-60. Every club above 30-30, 40-40. He created. Most prolific. But so goes the energy from Acuna in the top of the order. It seems so goes the rest of it. Their just energy wasn't there, and it was a tough one. It was a tough one. Like I said, I didn't feel awesome going into the playoffs because of the pitching issues, and that feeling was validated. And here we are.
So I'm going to throw a name out that Braves fans, particularly in the playoffs, are not. He's a beloved Brave, but in the playoffs, the name rings very hollow and brings back some tragic memories. I think the offense caught a little Ron Gant, right?
Oh, wow. There's a name from the past. Well done, sir. I agree with you. I agree with you. You know, the fortunate part is that Ronnie Gant's now on a morning show in Atlanta, so you know he's got that going for him. But yeah, I mean it's they went cold. They just went cold, and I don't know if there's anything other to say than that. You know, there were some chances here and there. You know, the Braves in Game 3 had bases loaded with one out, I believe, in the 7th-ish inning, plus or minus. I'm going from memory here because honestly, I've wiped all of it out. It's gone.
Fair enough.
Right. I mean, there were chances. They just didn't capitalize. And you know, as much as the Braves over the past couple of years have been known to leave men on base, this year wasn't one of those cases. You know, they didn't. And I don't have the numbers to back this up, but it didn't seem as if they left as many on base as they previously did. And by seem as much, it didn't. That's all based off of a group text between some buddies of mine and I. So it didn't seem to be there was as much bitching about it in past years. But yeah, I mean, through the season, they seemed to come through late. I wasn't concerned through the first 9 of a batting order against a pitcher because, you know, by halfway through the second, if not the beginning of the second, the bats caught on fire and they ended up catching up. So even when the Braves were down 3-0, wasn't concerned. And then it just faltered from there.
Yeah. So
it is what it is. I mean, the 2023 Atlanta Braves go the way of the 2022-23 Boston Bruins. I mean, there's no way around it. There's no way to hide from it. The bats went cold, but more importantly, there are pitching issues. And, you know, the Alex Anthopoulos, the GM, has come out and alluded to some things. We can talk about that in a bit. But, you know, going through 2024. But, you know, it is what it is. Baseball is dead to me.
That's fair. I could see that you would hate the rest of the series, given that the team that vanquished the vaunted Atlanta Braves is still in the playoffs and playing very well, to my chagrin, as someone who lives in the Valley and is a pseudo Arizona Diamondbacks fan. Let's just jump right into it then, even though baseball is dead to you, as Lazarus and Jesus and many others have done. Let's raise you from the dead. I know you've got your eye on the playoffs because you can't help but love baseball, even though it breaks your heart. The Texas Rangers, they don't want to lose any baseball games, apparently.
No, and you're right. I mean, listen, man, I'm a junkie. What am I going to do? As much as I don't want to watch it, I sit there in the morning anxiously awaiting some sort of news feed, X, Twitter, Athletic, whatever on baseball to give me some details on the Atlanta Braves. But needless to say, there's nothing there. So what do? I dive in anyway. Yeah, so you and I talked about this last time. The Texas Rangers are – that loud noise you hear is the buzzsaw that is the Texas Rangers and the soon-to-be-discussed Philadelphia Phillies. Texas doesn't want to lose. And, you know, we talked about this when Texas was going up against Baltimore. Baltimore was the number 2 seed in all of baseball, 100 and some wins, yada, 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 102-ish, 101 maybe. And the question was, are they too young? And is it too early? Well, it's proven that it was maybe too early, but also Texas may just be too good. They were good early. They faltered in the middle. They almost gave it up at the end. They came on to win it. Not came on to win it, but I take that back completely. They didn't win it. They did the unthinkable. They lost everything that they needed to at the end of the season to lose the division, and then flew to Tampa Bay. And on the way to Tampa Bay, apparently the Red Bull was passed around and they grew wings. And they don't seem to want to lose. And they are absolutely killing it in baseball. Thoughts?
So the thing about the Rangers that frightens me as someone who has hope is probably the best word. Hope that a young Diamondbacks team can beat the Phillies. The Rangers do what World Series teams do, and that's manufacture runs when they need to and hit home runs as well. The thing about the Phillies, we'll get to them, they didn't win last year, and when the home run evades them is probably the best word to use, or they just can't find it. But evade is probably the best word because they swing for them. They don't always hit them. When the home run is gone, they don't manufacture runs well. The Rangers, they do practically everything on offense well. And it's illustrated in the fact that in the first 3 or 4 innings of every game that I've watched, and probably every game that they've played in, you look and there's a crooked number up there. And it's not necessarily that someone hit a home run with a man on base. They get multiple hits, they string them together, they've got doubles, they've got singles, they run very well. That's just a team that frightens you from an offensive standpoint because they're not dependent on manufacturing runs or hitting home runs. So, the team that manufactured runs so well last year, and I loved it, was the Buck Showalter Mets. They couldn't hit a lot of home runs. That hurt them in the playoffs.
Yeah.
The Phillies hit a ton of home runs last year, vanquishing your Braves because of the home run last year. When they didn't hit home runs in the World Series against the Astros, it seemed like they were out of answers. The Rangers hit those home runs. I didn't realize, because I am an NL East snob, all of the different experience that's on the Texas Rangers. I mean, they've got a World Series manager in Bruce Bochy. They've got depth in pitching. Evan Eovaldi, who's been on numerous excellent playoff teams, probably should have won more World Series than he did, given that he pitched with Tampa Bay and the LA Dodgers and with Boston. You've got Scherzer on that staff now. You've got a ton of different relievers, and I didn't, as I am wont to do, I didn't prepare for this as well as I should have. I could have thrown out a list of their relievers, but they've got experience in their bullpen. So that team, they played well all season. Like you said, I don't want to say they threw it away because they were competing with a very, very, we can both agree, the Houston Astros. That's a damn good baseball team. So losing the division to the Astros in and of itself isn't a shame-worthy event. Losing the way that they did by going to Seattle and losing to an opponent that they thought they were better than 3 out of 4, and then to see the Astros win 4 out of 4. We discussed it. They had a fire in their belly. They were pissed off. They knew they were better than having to fly to Tampa Bay from Seattle. And, long story short, they've proven it. I was listening to John Smoltz last night after the game, and he was saying, with Houston's depth of pitching, they're not out of it. Well, in Game 3, Scherzer goes up there at home for his first divisional playoff game in a while, right? He didn't pitch one with the Mets because the Mets lost to the Padres. So, he's going to be amped. He's a maniac anyway. So I don't see, I think it would be hard-pressed for me to make an argument to you that Houston's going to be able to come back and make it a series. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, first and foremost, never trust a man with 2 eyes that are different colors.
This is true.
A la Max Scherzer. But you're right. And we briefly alluded to this last podcast. And I had brought up Corey Seager, who was batting .300 against every pitch that he's seen all year, other than the forkball, which where he was 0-1. Dude's batting .395 in the postseason.
Amazing,
right? You couple that with Marcus Semien. Now, Marcus Semien was with if I'm not mistaken, the Oakland Athletics before signing with the Toronto Blue Jays. Am I correct here?
Yeah, I think that's right.
So Marcus Simeon was a pretty decent athlete and not an awesome infielder. And he had an infield coach by the name of Ron Washington in Oakland. Now, for those that do not know, Ron Washington is also the third base coach for the Atlanta Braves, which has a process for turning infielders into Gold Glovers, which he did with Marcus Simeon.
Yeah.
When he went to Toronto. Then he goes to Texas. Now you got the bat to go with the glove. And we've talked about this a ton. I mean, specifically in regards to the Mets, you can't buy a team. And I don't think that as much as Texas brought in a lot of formidable free agents, they have a absolute future Hall of Famer at the helm in Bruce Bochy, who has, I don't know, 3, maybe 4 World Series rings under his belt. Is it 3?
It's 3 with San Francisco. Yeah.
Yeah. Who is as good as they go. But maybe you can, I don't want to say buy a team, but bring in top free agents that also fit in a clubhouse, because I think that's a big part of it as well. We've talked about that. But they do. You know, you bring in, they got a good young pitching staff. And what do? They signed DeGrom. Now DeGrom does what DeGrom always does, and he gets hurt. It's what he does. He gets $45 million a year to pitch for 20 games.
Yes.
It's an awesome contract. If you could give me that, I'd take it all day long. They then trade for Mad Max, who also at 40 years old, 39 years old, hurt. Well, Max is off the DL now, the IL. Max is coming back in Game 3 against a team of Houston that's down 2-0. We just got, I almost say smoked, because Game 2 wasn't a smoke, but they were down 4-0 after 1. That's a pretty good smoke job.
Yeah.
You know, couple that with the fact Aroldis Chapman was one of the greatest closers we had seen over a 5-year period, right?
Yeah.
Between the Cubs, maybe 6 Cubs and the Yankees. He's pitching the 8th inning right now. So you put that with that whole thing, plus the fact that baseball is the size of a watermelon right now. Let's call it a watermelon-sized bouncy ball that just shoots off the bat and goes out. Man, they're tough. That loud noise, buzzsaw's coming. You know, they haven't lost a game yet. They lost 3 games to end the season. They ain't lost a game yet, and they don't look like they're gonna. Now, things may change tomorrow in Dallas or Fort Worth, Arlington, pardon me, somewhere in the greater DFW. But I don't know, you got Mad Max on the mound, and he's been known to spit into his glove calling people an MFer.
That he has.
They good.
Yes. Just to note, we do talk that you can't buy a team. I don't think Texas bought their team. Texas had been on the precipice of being good for a while. They remind me actually of the Angels in that they would go out and spend a ton of money on key free agents, and then they wouldn't have enough to dole around to get other elements that would help the team. And I think between the guys that they've brought in who are, and again, I don't like using this word, but based on expectations, I think you could use the word overperforming at some key positions. Some of the guys that they brought up, that young kid, that's a farm system guy, right? The third baseman. And for Corbin Carroll, but for Corbin Carroll in Arizona, he'd probably be Rookie of the Year. And he still may be Rookie of the Year. I'm just biased towards Carroll being out here in Arizona and the fact that he's hitting over 400 in the playoffs, which we will talk about very soon. When you've got that kind of balance, you could see why a team like Texas is playing so well, is performing so well, and a team like Anaheim hasn't, and the Mets didn't this season. You can't just buy it all on the free agent market without having some of that raw talent be people that you brought up through your own farm system. Like you said, it helps when you start bringing up people who have played together in a farm system, and to the extent that they haven't played with many of the major leaguers, they've still gotten to know them when the major leaguers have had to go down maybe for a rehab assignment. So, yes, they're very powerful. I don't see them losing 4 out of the next, 5? Yeah, 4 out of the next 5 or 6
I don't either.
in order to make that a series. I said 4 out of the next 5, so it would be, would that be 3-3, or they would lose 4-3 to the Houston Astros. I don't see it. I don't see them actually losing Game 3, which means that, Houston comes out with a monumental effort in Game 4 and wins. I still see them wrapping it up in Houston. So the Texas Rangers in the World Series representing the American League, as they did when, coincidentally, Ron Washington was their manager. And they went back-to-back, and I believe it was 11-12 or 10-11. Then we have, on the other side of the fence, the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Philadelphia Phillies. As of the time and date recording this podcast, it is Tuesday, October the 17th, so we have not seen the start of the Game 2, Arizona at Philadelphia. Your thoughts on the series after seeing Game 1 and after witnessing in excruciating detail what Philadelphia can do to an opposing baseball team?
Again, let's not – spoiler alert. No spoiler alerts. But we have not seen Game 2 yet, right? We have seen Game 1. We have seen the first 2 games and then the 3 out of the next 4 games against Atlanta. Here's what I can tell you. Much like last year, that loud noise you hear is the buzzsaw that is the Philadelphia Phillies, much to my chagrin. And I don't mean chagrin. I mean massive, massive WTF chagrin. I hate these people. Bottom line. I don't hate them, but they're good. So Kyle Schwarber, as slow as he is hitting leadoff, seems ludicrous, but dude gets after people immediately. And this is what they did to the Braves last year. It's what they did in the first round last year. And I don't remember who was in the first round. Was it your Metropolitans in the first round last year?
No, last year I cannot remember who they beat. That's a good question because
not your Metropolitans.
It was not the Mets.
They got beat by San Diego.
That's right.
Okay. Regardless, doesn't matter. Much like they did last year, they came out when they're incredibly aggressive and not in a bad way. Like they are coming out and they are hunting pitches down on the regular. Everything I don't know what they're doing from a sabermetrics type thing, what they're doing from a scout. That's what I'm looking for, the scouting report perspective. But they're hunting pitches. And they are jumping all over people early and getting out and getting aggressive. And not only can they manufacture runs, they can hit the shit out of them. When you get Schwarber that's coming out and he's getting aggressive, followed up by the new Mr. October birthday, definitely October birthday, maybe new Mr. October, Bryce Harper over the past 2 years has really come into his own. From his age 29 season, the beginning of last year, now he's 31 as of yesterday. He is absolutely turning into a cutthroat, don't mess with me October guy. And I think from this point forward, regardless of what the Phillies do in the regular season, if they get to the postseason, watch out for Bryce Harper. And it's the same thing that we saw with Houston, with Alex Bregman and Jose Altuve. Watch out for Harper because he will cut you. That dude was on the cover of Sports Illustrated when he was 16 years old. He's 31. For 15 years, he's been in the spotlight, and I don't think anybody has lived up to it the way that he has. And I say that with the utmost respect. Like, dude is on. and he is an absolute killer.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate condition to face when you're an Arizona Diamondback. And just the fact that so many of the home runs in that first game were off of the first pitch.
Yep.
that is indicative, as you were saying, that there's a scouting report. These guys are looking for a pitch in that first pitch because obviously a young pitcher wants to get out in front of these hitters that have been so prolific in this playoffs and in last year's playoffs. And whatever that scouting report was, it was pretty damn accurate because you had several guys swinging the bat on a first pitch and being able to hit the ball out of the park. The one saving grace about what I watched, which I was very disappointed in the first 6 innings, was the end of that game where the Diamondbacks, they could have just cashed it in saying, hey, we're young. It's been a great season. This is just game 1. We just need to take one game, and that way we can go back home and get right. They fought back in that game, and I believe it was a ball. I'm sure every Philadelphia Phillies fan thought that the pitch was called properly, but in the 9th inning with 1 out, that ball was low. It would have put 2 on with 1 out and could have changed the dynamic of the game. And I'm forgetting the guy who was up, but he hits into a double play, ends the game. That was disappointing. I think Kimbrel would have been as threatened as he's been in the playoffs without that one game from the Atlanta Braves. And the Diamondbacks could have come back and tied that game up. That's a long way of me saying they did fight back. They were able to score some runs. And that, in my mind, for a young team that is unproven in the playoffs, to go up against the World Series champions in game 1 in their home, no less, and make a game of it and threaten them in the 9th inning with tying it up. I'm hoping that confidence carries them into game 2, because the fact of the matter is you don't expect to go, when you're the Arizona Diamondbacks, all the way into Philadelphia to face the World Series champions and win both games. If you can get a split, you've just turned the series over in your favor, right?
You are, and first off, they're not the World Series champions.
Oh, I'm sorry, they're World Series representatives of the National League. Thank you for pointing that out, if that's what I said.
Thank you. Phillies are not world champions. Haven't been for 20-plus years. So, I'm going to just point that out. But you're absolutely right. I mean, they were down 5-0 going into the 6th inning in Philadelphia, which is an environment. People say it's ruckus. It's more than ruckus. Those people are just mean.
Yes.
In a lot of cases. This is a fan base that threw, let's always remember, batteries at Santa Claus.
Yes. He was an illegitimate Santa Claus, by the way, but they still threw batteries at the man.
Regardless, it doesn't matter. They threw batteries at Santa.
They did.
But you're down 5-0 going in the 6th inning. That can't be a happy environment. I can't imagine the verbiage that's flailing from the stands by said Phillies fans. And you know what? They make it a game, and they're up. Now all of a sudden, at going into the 8th inning, they're only down 5-3. They hold in the bottom of the 8th. Now they're pressing in the top of the 9th to possibly get to the point of tying the ball game. Listen, if in the first NLCS of the current roster of the Arizona Diamondbacks, let me ask you this. When was the last time the Diamondbacks were in the NLCS?
I believe it was in 2011 or 2010. It was actually the year, I'm pretty sure it was the year that the Rangers went to the World Series from the American League.
All right, so is this, this is Randy Johnson and what's his name, right?
No, that's well after Randy.
Okay.
But yeah, that was the last team that went to the NLCS, and that was, I believe it was a one-off.
It was 12 years,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you've been rebuilding to this point for 12 years.
In a rebuilding
And-
phase, yes.
Right. And quite possibly should be National League Rookie of the Year, theoretically, right?
Yeah.
In Corbin Carroll. I think as a if he's not the Rookie of the Year, I don't know who is. Maybe, Seattle had somebody, can't recall the name right now. American League, doesn't matter. National League should be Rookie of the Year. You've got a pretty stout lineup, top to bottom. You've got some experience. You've got some homegrown talent. You've got some folks they brought in. To have that kind of showing coming into Game 2 in Philadelphia, dude. If they can carry that momentum from the second half of the game yesterday, and I don't know who's pitching that. I'm trying to pull it up, but if they can pull off and keep that momentum going, this could be a series. You pull one off in Philadelphia, right? You got a series.
Yes.
Series hasn't started until somebody wins on the road. The unfortunate part is in a 5-game series, it's a little bit more difficult. We can get into that at some point in time. I don't know if it's going to be tonight, but maybe a post-season or post-World Series wrap-up call talking about playoff formats might be in order. But if they can pull off a win tonight in Philadelphia against Aaron Nola, you got a series.
That's right. Yeah, so that's for this series, it's still in the Diamondbacks' power. They still have the opportunity to really turn the series on its head, even though, through 6 innings yesterday, didn't seem that way at all. Quick side note, I will be going to Game 3 on Thursday. So
nice.
In my mind, that's the game. Because if the Diamondbacks win tonight and have the chance to go up 2-1, that could really give them the momentum. And psychologically, that's what a young team needs is the belief in the box score that they can win. They lose tonight, and Game 3 is the series. That's Game 7. Because you can't go down 3-0 to the National League champions from last year. Thank you for correcting that nomenclature.
Welcome.
And expect that you're going to win 4 straight. So let's, with the time we have remaining, let's look at the World Series because we're, like you said, we may do a wrap-up call, but we're not going to do a call in anticipation of the World Series. Who do you see not only making it to the World Series, who do you see winning?
Well, if you look at the American League, Houston versus Texas, if Houston would have been able to pick off one of those games, I'm saying it's going 7 and it's a toss-up. Because you've got Verlander versus Scherzer, which is funny, due to the fact that they were on the same team July 1st.
Right.
But Houston is, they're battle-tested. I think it might have been Jeff Passan from ESPN, had the headline of an article, Houston's in the 7th straight ALCS. Why? Because they're Houston. And, they're definitely battle-tested. But the way the Texas is playing to win 2 games in Houston, the first 2 games of the series, now all of a sudden we're looking at Houston down 2 going into Arlington. That's a tough one. And I don't see them. They're up 2-0 right now with home field advantage. This game, it won't go five games. If they don't sweep, it won't go past 5. 4-0 possible. They could sweep the series.
Right.
So I got Texas going in, and, we'll see what happens with Arizona tonight. If they can pull off tonight in Philadelphia, they got a shot to win it in 7, not 6. But they got to win that definitive game in Philadelphia in order to get to the World Series. I don't know if they've got the experience to get it done, but they can. They can shock the world. But I think that it's going to be Texas-Philly in the World Series.
So it's Texas Philly in the World Series.
Yep.
Who do you have?
I'm flipping a coin. I mean, you got Mad Max in the World Series. If he is who he needs to be as a third starter, then I think the Phillies have problems. But the other challenge is, I mean, the Phillies have three top line starters. They've got a corrected and fixed bullpen that's throwing gas right now. And you've got Schwarber, Harper, Turner. 1, 2, 3. Do you want to see that?
Nobody does.
Nobody wants to see that. So it's all a matter. Listen, it's a chess match at that point in time. And so think about this. Let's think about that for a second. If this is a chess match, who wins? You know, if it's a chess match, does it come down to the manager? Then it's Bruce Bochy. I'll take Texas.
So in that matchup between Texas and Philadelphia, the only reason I would go with Texas, it was something that snake bit the Phillies throughout the course of the regular season. It certainly was a problem for them last year and very well could have cost them a World Series last year. Cost them the only game that they lost to the Atlanta Braves. Their defense is not that good. Their defense is, I would say, above average when they're playing well. They have the capacity to play terribly. And, of course, again, when you're facing a team like Texas, who's done the same thing that you have, if you're a Philadelphia Philly fan, they've done the same thing that you have. They've scored a lot of runs early on in games. They haven't hit as many home runs. And again, manufacturing runs may not be the right term because they've just strung together hits. But if you're putting the ball in play and you're putting pressure on the defense to continue to make the right read, make the right throw, and make it accurately, that's going to test the Philadelphia Phillies because they don't do that consistently. So in that matchup between the experience and the manager, you know, Bochy having not only those 3 World Series with the San Francisco Giants, remember, any of the San Diego Padres teams that you remember being worth a damn in the past 15, 20 years, he was their manager, right? You know, it was somewhat of a coup that he went to San Francisco in the same division, not getting San Diego over the hump, and was able to do so several times with those San Francisco Giants teams. So I have to give it to the Texas Rangers. Anything that you want to add, any cherry on top of the World Series Sunday that you want to add before we're done?
No, I think that's it. So here's where I think the baseline is for the World Series, which, as we both believe, as much as you're in the Valley of the Sun, it's probably going to be Texas-Philly, correct?
Yes, unfortunately so.
Okay. If Philly continues to hit the way that they're hitting, it's going to be tough because then all of a sudden, and specifically if they get out early, Texas, as much as you say got crooked numbers early, they didn't early on. They battled, but they weren't scoring runs till the 3rd or 4th inning. Philly's putting runs on the board in the 1st inning, and it's typically something over somebody's head.
This is true.
Possibly over somebody's hot dog. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So if that continues, that's putting a lot of pressure on those pitchers. And so that could be the difference. Like, how do these games start? Does Philly come out and start start hitting the ball early? If not, then all of a sudden it's a Texas situation where they are being able to, where they're able to, as you put it, manufacture runs, but put the ball in play. Right, you mentioned the Phillies played bad defense, except against the Braves, when the Braves hit the ball to every Philly who was standing in place. Right, that's one of the things that killed the Braves. Is every time they hit the ball hard, it was directly at Trey Turner at third base who didn't move. Right. So defense is awesome from that perspective, but I think it's a matter of who gets out early. You know, if Philly can continue to hammer them early which has been their MO, not only this postseason, but last postseason, then it's going to be tough because it's going to put the pitchers back on their heels. And if they get back on their heels and they're hitting from behind, if you're throwing a game in the second inning up 7-0, it's different than if you're down 3-0, right?
Yeah.
You've got a completely different game plan. So it's all a matter of what happens in those first 2 innings of each game. And if Philly comes out strong, then they absolutely have the advantage. If Texas is able to keep them in check, then I'm going to go with Bochy, who, as you pointed out, is great. That's a great point. Forgot about that. Every relevant San Diego Padres team prior to the past couple of years had Bruce Bochy at the helm. Yeah. I won't consider last year relevant. Listen, man. As much as I say baseball is dead to me, am I paying attention as much? Not really. Am I watching every inning? Absolutely not. But it's baseball season, and I'm still a baseball fan, and I don't care what anybody says. I don't think that there's any game like it in the U.S.
Well, I'm sure if it's a Game 7 between Arizona and Philadelphia and you see in the 8th inning that Philadelphia is down 5-4, you'll be watching that baseball game.
100%. If not, I got 117 days, 5 hours, and 14 minutes until spring training. We'll see what happens from there.
That's fair. All right, buddy. Well, as you said earlier, we will very likely do a post-World Series 2023 season wrap-up. We can discuss playoff formats and the future of our favorite franchises then. In the meantime, enjoy the playoffs, and I might be seeing you in person before we do that next podcast, correct?
I'll see you in Las Vegas.
All right, buddy.
All right, man. Thanks, man. See you soon.
Act 2 Epilogue.
Why do I not like making predictions on this podcast? Well, as demonstrated by this very podcast, I am infrequently correct. It is difficult to speculate on the future. And here's what's so funny. It's what I wanted to say. The Texas Rangers, they go into Houston. They go back home. I remember the interview with the player, and I can't remember which player it was, on the Rangers after Game 2. And the guy says, well, we have to play really well because they've played really well in our park. And what happens? Houston goes out and sweeps the Texas Rangers in Texas. The Arizona Diamondbacks lose 10-0. 10-0 in Game 2 in Philadelphia. They come back home. They eke out a win in Game 3, 2-1 in the bottom of the 9th inning. And then they come back to win in the bottom of the 8th inning on Friday night. As of the recording of this podcast, which is about to be published, they have a chance to go up in the series with their best pitcher on the mound at home. If there is a lesson to be learned, and of course there is, we routinely, well, let me personalize that. I routinely look and try to predict what's going to happen based on what I see, based on the radar that I have, and basically looking at, let's see, what's happened in the past. Can that be a predictor of what's going to happen in the future? Is this a safe way to approach what's going to happen in the future? Yes. Is the safe way to approach what's going to happen in the future always the best way for us to approach our own lives? No, it is not. It often limits possibilities, what opportunities lie before us. If we could stay present and recognize that sometimes opportunities are awaiting us in these setbacks, we couldn't have these fantastic possibilities, these highs, if we didn't go through the setbacks. I'm preaching as much to me as I am to anyone listening to this podcast. Go Diamondbacks. I'm hoping that Gallen can get some redemption tonight in Phoenix, and that the Diamondbacks can go back to Philadelphia and win one of two. Although it did not look like it on Tuesday night, the possibility is within their grasp. This is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast.